Good morning and welcome to our webinar, which is focusing on gaming PCs. It's about choosing the perfect gaming PC for you. So it's going to be a really informal Q&A session this morning. We have our own product expert, William Pass. So William's a very avid gamer himself. So if anybody's going to recommend a gaming PC, it sure is going to be him. So I'm going to pass you through to him. He's going to kind of describe what is a gaming PC, what components make it, what it is, and then after the session, we're going to run with some questions and answers. There's been a few people who can't attend the session today, so they've submitted their questions beforehand, and I'll read them out at the end and get William to answer them. So, William, I guess what should we think about when choosing a gaming PC?
So there's really three key things that you need to look at straight away. So your first thing would be your budget. So if you're on quite a tight budget and you're not looking to spend too much, then you're going to be looking at the low spec PCs and then looking to upgrade them in the future. So obviously your budget's gonna it can get really expensive. So your low spec ones are kind of your tight budget, and then your high spec ones you're going to be looking at a couple of £1,000. You can get up to like £100,000 PCs, but obviously you're not going to be looking at that. The second thing is going to be how often you play games. So if you don't play games too much, then you're again going to be looking at quite a low spec machine. So that's going to play games like Fall Guys and Among Us and stuff like that. And then if you play games a little every day or a couple of days a week, then you're going to be looking at the mid-spec PC. That's going to allow you to play some of the higher spec games, but obviously not on like the full graphic settings. So stuff like Fortnite and stuff like that. And then if you play every day and whenever you can in your free time, you're going to be looking at the high spec machines that can do pretty much everything you want. Your third thing is going to be what games you play. So I've touched on this a little bit just a second ago. Your low spec machines are going to be your little party games, so like Among Us, Fall Guys, stuff like that. And then your mid spec machines are going to be stuff like Fortnite, and then having stuff like Call of Duty, but on quite low to medium settings. And your high spec machine is going to be stuff that just requires a lot of graphical intake, so stuff like Tomb Raider and your really good looking single player games, and stuff like Call of Duty on the highest settings, stuff like that. So yeah, if when you're looking at buying a game PC, they're the key things to look at straight away.
Perfect. Okay, so I've decided I really want to invest in a gaming PC. Would you be able to take me through the parts of what is important overall to the PC build itself?
Yep. So when you're looking into the actual hardware of the PC, it can get really complicated. So I'll try and keep it as simple as I can. The CPU is kind of the brains of the computer, so that's going to try and get all the info, and it's going to push the info in the right direction, stuff like that. So when you're loading up a game, your CPU is going to pull the information from the hard drive of like your when you last played, and then it's going to put it into the game. So that's what the CPU kind of does. It also helps with having several tasks open at a time. So if you have your game and then Spotify and Discord and stuff like that open all at the same time, it's going to help with that. Your graphics card or your GPU, that's basically what your game's going to run off. So whenever you're playing a game, if you put it on the highest settings or the lowest settings, it's still all going to run off your graphics card. It's going to allow, if you have a really good graphics card, it's going to allow for a really smooth gaming experience. So your games are going to look really good and run really smooth, so you're not going to notice any lag or anything like that. It's better than a console because that runs at around 60 FPS. And then if you get into the really expensive graphics cards, you can pretty much get unlimited depending on what game you play. So yeah, that's your graphics card and CPU. Moving on to the RAM or the internal memory. Uh, your RAM helps the same as the CPU to have several tasks open at a time. So, but it doesn't bring any information from anywhere. It pushes it in the right direction. So, say you're playing a game and you get, I don't know, 10 kills or reach a checkpoint or something like that. That's going to really quickly go to your RAM, and then your RAM's going to push it to your hard drive, so it saves that. It's basically like short-term and long-term memory. It keeps it for a little bit and then pushes it on to the bigger hard drive, stuff like that. So in a gaming PC, quite the low spec and the mid spec PCs, you're going to be looking at around 16 gigabytes of RAM because you're not really going to have 16 gigabytes of data going into the RAM all at the same time if you're running a low to mid spec machine. On the high spec machine, you're going to be looking at 32 gigabytes of RAM. So that's going to make sure that nothing, you don't get any leaks, RAM leaks or anything like that, which means too much information is trying to get pushed through to the hard drive. So having 32 gigabytes is really safe for a high spec gaming PC. Anything over that's not really needed, because for a gaming PC it's not going to be needing to have 64 gigabytes of information pushed through to the RAM at the same time. Yeah, so that also helps with having several tasks open at a time, same as the CPU. So moving on to the internal storage, this is really simple. So it's just where all your storage is saved, basically. So in our default to go for is a 500 gigabyte SSD. That's going to have stuff like your Windows on it, any launchers for games or anything like that, and maybe one or two of your favorite games on there. So what your SSD is going to do is it's going to load up stuff really, really quick. So when you turn on your PC, you're going to be on straight away. Whereas if you had your Windows on a hard drive, it might take a couple minutes more. And then we have the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte hard disk drive in there. So that's going to have all your junk on that you don't use too often. You don't really care whether it takes a minute to load up or not. And then we have some upgradable options. So we've got an upgradable option of the 500 gigabyte SSD. You can upgrade that to a M.2 SSD, which is actually 3 times faster than a normal one. So when you turn on your PC, you're going to be on straight away. And if you have any of your favorite games on there, you're going to click it and you're going to be on really, really quickly. You can also upgrade the 2 terabyte hard disk drive into an SSD, either whether that be an M.2 SSD or a normal SSD. So everything you do is going to be really, really quick, and you're not going to have to wait long for anything to load up or anything like that. So if we move on to the peripherals, so the monitor, headset, stuff like that, when you're looking at a monitor, I'd recommend a 27-inch monitor personally. It just means it's not too big. You don't have to turn your head when you're looking at different sides of the screen, stuff like that. And it's also not too small, so you can see what's going on. I'd also recommend 144 hertz and 1 millisecond response time. So what your hertz is how quickly your screen refreshes. So say if you have a 60 hertz monitor and a guy's running across your screen, it's going to refresh 60 times, and then obviously he's going to run across your screen. But on a 144 hertz monitor, you're going to see a lot more of him running. That's just a really simple example. So you're going to see a lot more on a 144 hertz. Same with 240 hertz, but that can get quite expensive. With your response time, it's going to be, say you click your mouse and you shoot to click your mouse, you're going to see that within 1 millisecond. So obviously, as you get more and more response time, it's going to look worse and worse because you're going to be waiting a lot longer. It's going to become quite a noticeable difference. So yeah, I'd stay around a 27-inch, 144 hertz, and 1 millisecond response time, unless you've got the budget to go up to 240 hertz. Um, Other than that, it's just between a curved and flat monitor. That is completely down to preference. Um, a curved is going to be more expensive, but again, you're not going to have to turn your head as much. But it's not a noticeable enough difference to warrant like a £100 more just for the same one, but it's curved. So moving on to the headsets, I'd recommend 7.1 surround sound or Dolby Atmos, which if you're looking at headsets, it will say in the description. Um, and I'll also go for a wireless headset if you've got the budget. So wireless headsets and the new wireless technology and a lot of stuff is getting really, really good now. So there's no latency at all. You're not going to notice the difference between a wired headset and a wireless headset. And it also allows you to get up and go get a drink without having to take it off, stuff like that. Um, there's also there's obviously a lot of different headsets, but if you're sat at your desk for quite a while, you might not want a really heavy headset because it might start to hurt your head. So you might want to have quite a light headset that's really comfortable. But that again, that's down to preference. Also, the microphones on headsets are getting really, really good now. So if you go up in the range of headsets, say you go to 7.1 surround sound or Dolby Atmos, the microphone on that will usually be really, really good. So for that, you're probably looking around 150 to £200 if you want a really, really good headset, especially wireless. That bumps it up by about £50 to 100, depending on what headset you're looking at. So moving on to the keyboard and mice, they kind of go hand in hand. So say you've got quite big hands, you're going to need quite a big keyboard and a big mouse. Obviously, vice versa for having small hands. In terms of wireless options for both, there's not too many wireless options for keyboards at the moment, but I know a couple of companies that are bringing them out relatively soon. But for wired mice, there's loads and loads of options. I've personally got a wireless gaming mouse, and I love it. You can spin it around, do whatever you want with it without having to worry about a wire being there. Also, the battery life on them is really, really good now. So even if you don't forget to charge it for a couple of days, it still works perfectly fine. The one that I have comes with a charging dock, so you just put it on there and it charges. You don't have to plug a wire in, which means it's really, really easy to charge, and I never forget. But obviously, again, both of them tie into budget. So if you have quite a big budget, you're going to be looking at wireless options for mice and stuff like that. The last thing I'd probably say about keyboards is there's a big difference between a loud keyboard and a mechanical keyboard and a quiet low profile one. So your loud one might be a little slower when you press the button. It might happen a little bit later, but it's not a noticeable difference. So it's completely down to preference. So yeah, in terms of inside the PC and the peripherals, that's pretty much it for that one.
Perfect. It's definitely some food for thought there. So, what have we done to kind of build some packages with those parts themselves?
So our velocity package is going to be our low spec one. So that's going to be if you don't play games too often and you just want to kind of have fun with friends on them little party games like Fall Guys and Among Us and stuff like that. Our Phoenix package is our mid spec package. So if you're playing games a little every day or maybe a couple of days of the week and you want to play stuff like Fortnite, Call of Duty on medium settings, stuff like that, and just not worry about having to think about what games you can and can't play, then the Phoenix package is really good for that. A Galactica package. That's going to be there's all singing, all dancing. You don't even have to worry about upgrades at all, anything like that. It's also going to be really good for VR gaming. So it's going to have the specs to do so. So yeah, if you're playing games every day, then the Galactica package is really good for that.
Perfect. As I said before, we did have some people register for the event that were unable to make it this morning. So what we've done is we've collated the questions that they've had prior to the event and any that have come through on the live chat. So I'm going to fire them at you, William. So we've got a question about why buy a gaming PC when I could buy a console for around about the £500 mark?
So if you've got the budget for a PC, it's really worth it because you get a lot more versatility out of it. So say you really really like playing controller on your Xbox or PS4 or whatever console you have, you can actually play on your controller on the PC without any delay or anything like that. Whereas if you wanted to play keyboard and mouse on a console, there's a noticeable delay in that. So when you press a button, you're going to notice the delay between when you press it and it happens on the screen. So for that reason, it's really worth it. Also, there's a lot more games on a PC. So even the exclusive games, say there's an exclusive game for Xbox and an exclusive game for PS4, but you only have an Xbox, you might have to buy the PS4 to play it. But if you've got a PC, eventually after a couple of months of them games coming out, it moves over to the PC. So you can play the exclusive games on Xbox and exclusive games on PS4. So it's really good for that too. Also, your games in general are going to look really, really good and run a lot smoother. So I think a console runs around 60 FPS when there's not too much going on, but it can go down to 30 or 40 FPS. So when you're on a PC, depending on what spec you have, it can go to an unlimited FPS. So it looks amazing, really smooth, and looks really, really good. So other than that, yeah, it's just really, really smooth, looks really good, and you get so much versatility out of having a PC instead of a console.
Perfect. I know we touched in one of the prior kind of slides about the graphics cards and the difference between them, but one of the questions that we've had is actually what is the benefit of having the most up-to-date one?
So having the best graphics card is going to be quite expensive first off. So if you have quite a big budget, then you are going to be looking at the best one. But having the best one means that you're not going to have to upgrade for ages. So you're not even going to have to think about upgrading your graphics card for a couple of years because it's going to be more than sufficient to handle games for a couple of years. Also, the 20 series and 30 series, which are the new graphics cards, they come with RTX, so that's ray tracing. So it means like real life shadows, real life reflections, stuff like that. It gives a really, really immersive experience and just looks absolutely phenomenal. I've got an RTX graphics card myself, and it really does look amazing. Also, you get a lot of FPS, like I talked about a second ago with the console. So if you have a really, really good graphics card, you're going to get loads and loads of FPS, which is going to make your gaming really, really smooth and yeah, again, look amazing. So it's really worth having the best one instead of having maybe a low spec graphics card and then upgrading every year. So yeah, it's really worth it.
Perfect. And I think I've seen a lot about VR and things like that, particularly around Christmas. It's kind of the must-have Christmas gift. So, will I be able to run VR and gaming on my PC?
So In terms of VR gaming, you're going to have quite a high spec machine. So our high spec Phoenix package with all the upgrades or our Galactica package is going to be fine for that. Obviously, if you want a really smooth experience, you'd go for something like the Galactic package with really high specs. So what VR does is it has to load everything around in a 360-degree view. So it's going to have to load a lot more. So having a really high spec PC is going to be really worth that. Also, you're going to have really good cooling. So after playing VR for an hour or two, it gets really, really hot. So having really good cooling is really worth it in a VR gaming PC.
Perfect. And the last question of our pre-submitted ones is, does Custard actually build the PCs themselves?
Yep. So from start to finish, if you ask a question about a game PC, all the way from that, all the way to you getting the PC, is all done by Custard. So, and we also offer a year free IT support for customers. So, if you ever have a problem with your PC, we know exactly what's gone into your PC and who built it. So, if there's any problem with hardware, anything like that, we can help because we know exactly what's gone into it. So, yes, from start to finish, it's all done by Custard.
Perfect. And I think you touched on the three kind of gaming solutions that we've made. However, I would just like to reiterate it's a totally bespoke package. So if you kind of want to change the graphics card, you want to change anything like that, you can simply go to Will for all of that information. So that kind of summarizes very briefly our gaming PC webinar today. You'll see details on your screen of how to get in contact with us, particularly Will, who's kind of passion is gaming, so he's going to be the best person to help you through this process. So you can give us a call on 0115 971 7434 or simply email sales@custardgroup.co.uk. The whole idea of this is that we'll guide you through from start to finish the build of the gaming PC itself. And it's always nice to have somebody like William who is so passionate about it and really knows what it's like to game on all of these different kind of models. So he'll be able to tell you the pros and cons of every part of the gaming PC itself. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. The webinar will be available and we'll send it around via email for all of those who couldn't attend. But other than that, have a good weekend, everybody.